Thank you.
Hi, June.
Hi, Scarlett.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We just did the Colbert Show.
How'd it go?
Went well. I liked it. It was fun. It was fun to do.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, you're in New York now. I guess, I don't know, how do we start this thing? I guess I'll ask you. So you live in Studio City,
Right.
But you lived here for a very long time.
I lived here for 65 years. Yeah. I love New York.
Yeah, New York. And you've always said that you love New York, and we were talking the other day about how you lived in the West Village at first and then the Upper West Side for a long time.
It was always the West Side for me. I didn't even know much about the East Side, but it's fun being over here.
Did you, when you first moved here, you were moving from Ohio, is that right?
Cleveland, yeah, the Cleveland Playhouse.
So was New York was that the goal, to get to New York?
It was, I think either LA or New York is where you went then, certainly. And Cleveland, I don't know, New York just seemed the right place, and it was always theater in my early years. It wasn't film at all.
How old were you when you first walked the boards? Is that the right one?
Walked the board. Well, I was about 19 or 20, I think, when I went to the Cleveland Playhouse, and I stayed there 5 years. And I ended up on staff, and we did a lot of work. I mean, we just worked constantly on plays, musicals.
And musicals.
Musicals.
You were a dancer also.
Yeah, I was. And I started singing. So my early career, especially here in New York, was all musical work. I would say the first 20 years in New York was all musical.
And when you were in Cleveland, were you also... you started working at the theater, and then you were part of the repertoire there?
Yeah,
and
the group.
And then when you decided to move, was it just, okay, I'm going to pack up and see what's there?
Quite a few people left the Playhouse at that same time. And I was married to my first husband, and he and one of our friends who was the musical director and became a big Broadway musical director after we got to New York. But, so it was kind of a group. I had a network, really, Cleveland Playhouse.
So when you got here, was there like a promise of work as soon as you got here?
No, but I did an off-Broadway show with a director who I had worked with in stock just before I came to New York. And I think within the first 6 months, I was doing that.
Were you mostly doing, like, comedy? Or was it drama too?
Drama. I did in Cleveland. I remember one of my favorite jobs was doing Crucible, and I did the. I forget her name now, but the
Which
little
Proctor or Goody were you? Was one of the two.
One that,
Goody
that caused all the trouble. The
Abigail.
Abigail. That's it. I did that role.
That seems fitting.
Yes. Causing trouble.
But when you were in Cleveland before you first went out on the stage, were you taking music and theater, like dance lessons?
No, I had danced for years before, mostly tap dance. And I'd taken a little modern dance here and there. So I just had a smattering, but I could dance fairly well. And that's how I first started Cleveland in the musicals. And then because my friend was the musical director, he insisted I start singing. And I did, and I enjoyed it. It was fun. And I became kind of the comedian in most of the musicals that we did then.
Did you dance as a kid?
Yeah, tap danced.
Tap dance as a kid? And your mom played the piano, right?
Yeah. She actually played for silent films before I was around, but she did do that.
In the theater she played?
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So your house was full of music, I guess.
Yes, she taught piano, so it was really full of music, sort of. I mean, you had all these piano lessons going all the time.
That seems annoying.
It was, yes. It could be. It could be.
But so when you kind of started dancing, then you were doing musical theater and everything, how did your parents feel about the fact that their daughter was going into the arts?
I think they never believed it until I actually left. and went to the Cleveland Playhouse. And I don't know that they even believed it then. I can remember my mother saw me on Broadway and said something about, well, now do you think you might come home? So I don't know. I just don't think it was ever anything real to them. They didn't, they'd never lived it at all.
Did you feel like when you got to New York, you were home?
Yes, I could breathe. I think it's the easiest I ever breathed in my life was the day we moved to New York.
So you were married, and then you moved here with your husband, yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you guys were here, what was your relationship? Because was your husband a director then?
Yeah, well, he was an actor and a stage manager and a director. And it was difficult for him. I think that's one reason that our marriage did not work, because he never really enjoyed New York. He never really appreciated it or what it could do for you or what it was. And I loved it. I truly loved living in it. And it would have been difficult for me to leave it. And he wanted to leave it very much. So I think that was one of the problems of the first marriage.
Yeah. Because I think New York is a hard place to live when you don't want to be here.
If you don't want to be here, it's awful, I think. Yeah.
And so when you were working on stage, what was your, were you also taking acting classes? How did you develop your your work? How was it? Just by doing it?
Yeah, I did the acting certainly, and they didn't really. The Cleveland Playhouse had no actual classes or anything like that. They weren't teaching you how to act at all. It was through doing it over and over and over again, and I just remember I came in with a slight Southern accent. And one thing they did do was take the Southern accent away, right away. One of the older actors talked to me about it, and he took it upon himself to help me, and it really worked because I had Southern accent.
So when you started if you were doing more dramatic work, how did you? Was it just an instinctive part of your process? Okay, I'm going to, I'm able to access all this stuff, or is it something that you kind of, developed over time?
Well, at the time, I think I was working more over singing. I was doing a lot of singing and working on my singing all the time in Cleveland. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why when I hit New York, the musical took over. And that's where I felt comfortable, and I think that's where I was my strongest as a performer.
But you're also you're a great dramatic actor, and I know that about you.
Yes.
Because I had the good fortune of being able to work with you as a director this past spring.
Yeah.
So, how was your, I remember you saying something about how, I believe it was your second husband, I think.
My second husband was a wonderful
coach.
acting teacher, and he was brilliant. And he really wanted me, one of the first things he said after we met, doing a musical in stock, was you could be a really fine actress. And I thought, well, that would be great, but it never occurred to me. But he taught me how to work. He really did. And I made this switch then, and I did it by doing off-Broadway and regional theater. And I never really did a musical again until I think I did Waitress in 2018.
Wow. So what kind of work were you guys? Did you do scene work together? I mean, how was it? Was it frustrating?
I was screaming. I went into his class, and we would argue in the class with the class all there laughing at us. And, he would kept saying, you can do this, and I kept saying, I can't do this is awful. I was just, I didn't know what to do. It was hard, but finally it hit, and it made sense to me. And now I couldn't work without it. That's how I work, is through the way that he taught me.
And is a lot of that stuff, you know, do you think, is it like a specific methodology? Is it more, do you use, when you're, okay, let me go backwards. Because when we worked together, somebody said, oh, June will be off book, already for like months, which I was shocked. Because I don't work like that I do scene work very differently when I'm filming. And so what's your process of breaking down a script? Do you work with, anybody who will do it with you? Hey, want to run lines? Or how do you, start the process of, okay, this is an idea I have and how I'm going to do this thing?
I do it all myself. I never work with anyone. Pardon me. And people offer, to do lines or do this or read the scene. And I never do that. I always do it just on my own by myself. And I learn my lines through just going over it over and over again. But I take the amount of time I have. If I have 1 week, I can do it in 1 week. But if I have a month, I take a month. And it literally, I really don't feel I know it until just before I'm, going to be doing and using it. And because I spend so much time that way with my lines, I'm also studying the script at the same time. So I'm getting the script over and over and over again. And I believe in the script because that's what I use in terms of will I do this job or not. It is the script that tells me whether I'm going to do it or not. And I think that's also, I just believe in the script. I believe in what is written.
And when a project comes to you, what are you looking for exactly? Are you looking for something you haven't done before, something you can do? What would you be looking for now?
Now, I think it's just something that takes my interest, really. That I find interesting. And now there are people that I will work with again. And it wouldn't matter. If you ask me, it wouldn't matter what script you had. But without someone like you that I know, I just have to read that script. And it was funny because just before we went to do your film, to do Eleanor, I had an offer to do 1 day on a TV show in New Jersey. And everybody thought I was nuts because I did it. I took the day. We flew to New Jersey, did 1 day shooting, and flew back to L.A. And this was just before we were coming to New York to do Eleanor. And there was something, it was a script, and I thought it was a vampire, but it wasn't. No, it was a leprechaun that drank blood. I'm serious. Now, how could you turn that down? Really. I read that, and I thought, and it was Ryan Murphy's Leprechaun is what it was.
What did you wear?
I wore a wonderful sort of white nightgown and robe, and I just sat in a chair, and they had my eyes all done. I think I had glasses on for a while, and then they took them off, and they did it. They didn't do my eyes. It was all funny eyes. And I was the matriarch of a group of blood-sucking leprechauns. But it's things like that just intrigue me.
Damn, because that was the next project I wanted to offer you, so I guess I'll have to switch time. Oh, you're already familiar with the work, so that's great. No prep time. So when you read this script, and I think this, first of all, I think you guys will all see the film after we get off of the stage, but it's so great, and it's really, really funny. And the banter is so great. I told you that when I just love the banter. It almost seems, I'm assuming it's all scripted.
Yes, this was completely scripted.
Well, I love that about it because it's so, and all the actors in it are so wonderful. It's a fantastic cast. But part of that is the natural. I mean, it's just very lived in. So when you read this script, did Josh Margolin, who's the director, it was his first time directing, were you familiar with him? How did it come across to
I
your
didn't
desk?
know Josh at all. Beanie Fieldstein, who I had done Humans with, was a family friend of Josh, and she was at their house, and they were talking about Josh's new script he'd just finished, and they were talking about who he wanted to do it. And she said, "Who do you want for the leading role?" And he said, "June Squibb, but I don't know how to get a script to her." So Beanie said, "I'll get a script to her." Beanie texted me, said, "I'm sending you a script." I texted back, "Okay." And that was it. That's how I got this brilliant script. And I didn't know anyone. I didn't know Josh or any of the producers, nothing. Just Beanie said, "I'm sending you a script." And I started reading it, and I thought, my God, I've got to do this. I knew right away that this was something that I had to do.
Yeah, it's very special.
Yeah.
And I think, the relationships between all the characters are incredibly touching, and the relationship between you and Richard Roundtree is so moving. Did you know him at all?
I didn't know him at all. And they brought him to my apartment for lunch and to meet me. And the first thing I said to him was, "Well, it's about time." And they all looked at me like, "What are you doing, June?" And Richard knew what I meant. He said, "Yeah, you're right. It's about time." I just meant we should have met. We should have worked together before this, It was insane that we didn't know each other.
So you felt almost like you knew each other right
Yeah.
away. Yeah, that comes across too. You guys are so wonderful
Yeah.
together, like very, just incredibly touching. And he's so touching to watch.
He's
too.
wonderful.
He's beautiful.
He's such a fine actor, which I think a lot of people, they get all involved with him having been Shaft, and they forget or haven't seen, him do some really fine work.
When you guys did you have a rehearsal for this, or did you just
Not really. No, we didn't.
So you were just doing, every day you were coming to set, you would rehearse in the morning and then block the
Right.
scene and get
Yeah.
ready and come back? Because you guys have a lot of kind of heavy, like the scenes are verbose between both of you guys. So you didn't have any, you just would get there and that was it. The magic would happen.
No, we worked hard. We really did.
How long did you shoot it for?
I think it was 27 days, 28 days, something like that.
The LA is such a character in the film.
The Valley.
The Valley, yeah.
I love that.
It was, what were the days, I mean, when you're making a movie like this one, I'm sure that, and I know this actually for a fact, and now I know it like deep in my soul, that every single dollar counts. So you guys were really stretching it, and the movie looks so great. But were the days, I mean, that must have been long days that you guys, because if you had to make it in 27 days, it was probably because you had the budget to do it, because it's a dense,
Yeah,
there's
it
a lot,
is.
there's a lot of it. So how were the days? Were they just?
They weren't awful. They weren't. It wasn't. Well, no, I mean, sometimes we work 15, 16 hours a day, and that's hard, I think. But I think we probably worked 10 to 12.
Wow.
Something like that.
So, and did it's very, as you guys will see, you have like a really physical part in it, which is a joy to watch. And what was that like for you, having to get on? Did you have to ride that actual scooter thing?
I did, but I loved it. I loved it. That was one thing when I read the script. I thought, that scooter's going to be fun to do. And my idea, I read the bed rolls, and I read climbs up and gets the gun, and I read up the stairs, and I read all the things. And I thought, I can do all this. There's nothing that I felt I couldn't do. And they were so worried. The producers and Josh were so worried because they thought I was going to kill myself. And they brought the scooter over because I kept saying, I can ride that scooter. And they brought the scooter over to my complex, and they let me ride it, do it, but they set the stunt coordinator running along beside me the whole time. They were also frightened. But that helped because that sort of set this, they began to think, well, maybe June can do more physically than we think she can do. And so it would come up time to shoot, and I would say, well, let me try. Like the bedrolls, I thought, I know how to do that, I can do that. And most of the time they did use my stuff. So I felt, listen, you may not know, but the Alliance of Women Journalists, I think it was, they voted me the best stunt person of the year. I'm serious. Do you believe that?
So Marvel next, is that right?
Yeah, right.
You could do the leprechaun character.
Yeah.
When you first moved to California, it was later in your life that you moved here. What was the appeal then?
I think the fact that I love New York, but it was getting harder and harder to live here as an older person. And as I couldn't use the subways with all the stairs, and I was using buses, and that was fine, but also cabs were getting hard to find. It was not as easy as it used to be. So when I went out to LA for work, and then I kept getting work out there, and I just found, well, this might be easier. And in fact, I think it is.
Do you have a community out there? When you first got there,
Yeah.
did you?
Yeah, I did have people that I've known for years that basically I met here in New York, but they had moved to LA.
Yeah, working in LA is great because you have everything is, the industry is all there at your fingertips and it's in your backyard, and you have this incredible pool of talent there, but the thing I feel about LA, and we were talking about this a little bit the other day, is that when we were talking about being in New York and your days here in New York and the community and everything, and I feel like sometimes in LA you don't have that same, it's not like you just kind of pick up and run into friends, and it's everything is planned, and it feels a little, I don't know, I feel like sometimes it can be isolating a little bit there.
Well, I think it is, and also it is harder. It's easy to get around because you do it in cars, but it's harder to get around, and so you don't go out and meet people. I mean, you make a point of going to someone's house and driving there. But here, we meet people. Let's meet at a restaurant for dinner or something like that. That's harder out there, I think.
Do you have a lot of friends in the industry out there?
I do have. I have a lot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a fun part of it, I guess. If you ever see them. Depends on which side of town you live on.
Yeah, right, exactly. I won't go to the west side.
What actors, when you were, when you were here, when you first came here and you were on Broadway and stuff, were there actors that you really looked at where you thought, oh, that's a career I'd like to model mine?
Yeah. Do you remember Colleen Dewhurst?
No, I don't know. Oh, that person does.
Somebody does out there. Yeah. She was a wonderful actress, and I always admired her work tremendously. And I think I saw most of her work in New York that she did on stage. I learned a lot from Ethel Merman. I really did. She had a great respect for her audience. And I don't think before I did Gypsy and was, worked with her, that I ever understood that. I knew what the audience was, but she really respected them.
What does that mean?
It meant that she wanted to be at her best all the time for the audience. And I remember we were on tour, and she had voice trouble. And they told her that it would be better to do the show with the voice a little down rather than canceling. So she decided to go ahead and do that. But she talked about it, and it was a problem for her to decide which is best. And she kept thinking the audience should have the best. And I think that she always felt that.
And when you guys were touring, what was your schedule exactly? Was it the same thing here where you do like 2 shows?
8 shows a week, the same as in New York.
So you'd stop in a town for a period, for a
10 weeks we did out here, L.A., and we did 10 weeks in Chicago, and I think like 6 or 8 in Boston, something like that.
And did you guys travel with the same crew of people? Would everybody set it up? So it was like a family kind of.
It was, yeah.
You think that was part of the appeal too? I mean, all actors were all like sort of nomadic, right?
I can remember going cross country on a train. I think we went from Denver to L.A. on the train, and that was wild. I'll tell you that. It was. We had days off, and we were eating and drinking on the train, and it was fun. God, it was fun.
What are some, you think that was a happiest time?
I think that was a very exciting time for me because I had never worked on Broadway before, so it was my first show on Broadway. And in New York, I think that lifts you as an actor. Well, I've made it to Broadway. I'm finally doing a Broadway show. So it was very, very exciting to me. Yeah, it was.
Do you see theater in L.A.?
I do. I used to see more than I do now, but I still do see some.
Do you have that thing that I feel like everybody who's done theater, you have where you see the play and immediately go, I've got to do a play? Or you just miss it, Yeah. And so if you're not working on something, I mean, you've been so busy. It's really incredible how busy you've been. But when you're not working on something, how are you thinking, oh, I've got to book a gig, or are obviously you probably don't have that same thing where it's like, oh, a lot of actors are, they think, oh, if I don't work immediately, I'm going to be irrelevant and disappear. I don't think you have that. But are you looking actively for other stuff to make, or are you kind of wait for stuff to come your way?
I sort of wait, just and I get so many. I mean, like the fact of how that came.
What's that? Oh, audience questions.
Oh
my God! I thought I was getting critiqued something
already. Not yet.
Wait, what were you were saying something just now about whether the work? Oh, when you were saying that when the job came, what, Eleanor or Thelma?
No,
or the leprechaun thing.
And the leprechaun. No, it's just now. I don't think I feel that, and now I don't go looking for work. Most of the time, it comes to me, and that's great. That's great too. But I don't. Now I enjoy my time off. I really do. And when I was younger, I didn't. I think I felt, oh God, I have to keep going. I have to keep going.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that now.
That's liberating.
Yeah, it is.
Did that happen more recently, or is it?
I think it happened within the last 10 years. And I think that things got easier for me in the last 10 years. And that's probably a part of it. I didn't have to feel, that I'm out scrounging all the time to try to find a job.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you can't, and you think that happened when you started working in film. It was kind of later in your career.
Very, yeah.
How when was that?
My first film, I think I was 61, and that was Alice with Woody Allen. And Nebraska was about, that's a very unsung film, and it's a lot of fun, Alice is.
Yeah.
When Nebraska was about 10 years ago, and that was a big shift in my career. And I think that working with Alexander Payne made a difference in my career. Because when I did About Schmidt with Alexander, it all at once made me legitimate in Hollywood. And I don't know why. But it did. And all at once, they were interested in me in Hollywood and had never been before.
Were you, when you were, auditioning and stuff like that, and when you were in New York, and I guess you were like, you know, how it used to be now, it's different with the, you know, they used to have casting directors would cast, they would do a round of actors in LA, and then they would see a round of actors in New York, and so I'm guessing you were...
But live.
Yeah, live,
You
of
did it
course.
live,
Yeah, live. And then were you thinking, oh, I'd love to book a, you know, what it used to be called legit. I'd love to book a legit gig. But you would go, you know, thinking, oh, I'd love to break into film. I mean, or was it sort of you thought, oh, you know, I could do theater and be perfectly happy?
No, what happened, it was, we all at once were getting an influx of feature films in New York City. And I kept seeing friends or talking to people that I knew that kept saying, well, I'm working in a film. I'm doing one of these new films that came in. And I went to my agent and said, I think I should be doing one of these new films that came in. He said, sure. And a week later, I had an audition for Woody Allen's Alice, and I got it. And then I kept getting films, and all at once, I had a film background, which I'd never had before.
What was the process of getting, I mean, just the whole environment of the set is so, I mean, the vocabulary is so different on set, and, you know, it's something that is, you know, I can't even, it's very hard for me to have a perspective on it because I've been in that environment since I was a kid, but I'm imagining that if you were in the, you know, even when the first time that I had done theater as an adult, it was a learning curve, you know, and so what was the process of being on, I mean, of course, even with Woody, because he's so particular too, I mean, it's just not, although maybe it was a little bit of an easier transition because his stuff can be very theatrical in the sense that
I think he has kind of I don't know, an attitude towards his films. The only thing is he does fire people very easily. You know, if you're not doing, you know, what he wants for the film, he'll fire you. But I felt, what amazed me were all the wires, all the electrical stuff on the floor. And, you know, I had been all my life in theaters, and there was none of that. It was around, but not like this. I mean, they practically had to carry me over all of this because I couldn't get over it. I was like, my God, this is awful.
And what about acting for the camera? How is that? Because it's a specific skill, right?
Yeah, I guess it is, and I think I learned it. And I guess I have to say thank you, Woody Allen, for putting up with me, because I'm sure I didn't know, you know, really what I was doing. And I probably winged it. I was very good at that. You know, just, oh, sure, I can do that. And
I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, of course, and that was a while ago. So you've had, now it's impossible for me to imagine having worked with you in the capacity that I have, because you're so fluid. I mean, you're just, I have to say, I'm going to have to brag about you for a second, but I have to say that June is, you can apply, you know, 5 notes at the same time, and then you'll do a take. The first take, so great instincts, and then it just gets better and better and better. And it's like, you know, I mean, I would love to work you forever because you're so versatile. But it's like you'll apply the note, and every single scene, there's a perfect take. Every single scene, there's a perfect take. It's incredible how sharp. I mean, you are as a performer. You just are. You know, and I'm sure it's also probably just the work that you do before. You know, it's all that prep work that you do before. So it's like it's in you.
Yeah. Again, the script. I get it in here.
Okay, I guess I have to ask these questions now. Which one do I like? Oh, let me see. Oh my God, this is a really funny one. Well, it's actually not funny, but it's kind of.
I can't wait. Come on.
Well, okay, so when you were preparing, this is from Francis, And when you were preparing to play Thelma, did you have any conversations with people who had been through the type of scams that Thelma went through?
Yes, well, everybody kept, on set, people would come up and say, my mother was scammed or my grandmother was scammed. Everybody knows somebody that's been scammed. They really do.
Have you ever been scammed, June?
No, they've tried, and I've gotten texts and emails, all the time that with these strange. The U.S. Post Office does not have an address like that, but that's they try all the time.
Oh, this is kind of it's from Daniel. He says, "What was the movie that inspired you to want to act?" And then it says, "I love you," which is very nice. Daniel loves you. But I guess what was one way you could phrase it is, what was your, did you come out singing and dancing, June?
I think I did, yes. Because I did dance very early on. But I only saw Westerns because I went to the movies every Saturday afternoon, and there would be a Western movie. Tex Ritter and, all those wonderful cowboys. And then I would see one of the serial episodes. And I loved that. You couldn't have taken me anywhere else but there on Saturday afternoon.
Was that so did you have the spark in that way?
I think I did. I don't know if I realized it, but I loved that. I loved seeing it.
Someone wants to know what's next, June.
What's next?
What's next, June?
Is seeing this lovely lady's directorial debut, and you are all going to be blown away by it. I'll tell you that. No, we, and I'm going to say we now because we have a film called Eleanor the Great, and we're both very proud of it. And she's seen it an awful lot. I've seen it twice, and it's really a stunning film. So we're both very excited about it.
Yeah, you're so great in it, June. You're so good in it. Someone wants to know. April wants to know. In what ways are you similar to Thelma, or what ways are you different from her? What ways are you different from Thelma?
Different from Thelma? I don't know that I am. I've met her. No, I've met the real Thelma, and she's great. We carried on quite a conversation, and I walked in the room and said, "I'm Thelma Post," and she said, "No, I'm Thelma Post." She really was great. So I think we had a lot in common, more than we ever did not.
Is the character of Thelma based on Josh's grandmother?
Yes, and she's 104 now. And still going. She's great.
So was it based on a sort of a premise that he thought up, or?
No, she actually was scammed. And before she sent the money, her family got involved. They found out about it and realized that Josh was not in jail. And they cleared it all up, so she never did the money part. But it gave him the idea. And he keeps saying that if she had done the money part, she probably would have done what I did to get it back. She's got a lot of determination. She really does have.
Have you ever played a real person before? Have you ever played a person that was based on
I don't think I have. I think this is probably the first time.
Yeah. I did it. I played Janet Leigh one time, and it was hard. It was really
to be, yeah.
It was so hard to do it because it felt, firstly, I had this whole other responsibility, and then it was hard to get in to someone who we all know and admire, and you don't want to do an impression of somebody. You know what I mean?
I think it's hard. It's hard to decide how much you're going to do that is them, and how much you're going to make your own.
Right. Yeah.
And he was not insistent upon anything physical or voice or anything about it. I think he felt that I had a sense of determination, grit, etc. And he wanted someone who fit his script, really, you know.
Yeah, I think the hard thing I found one way to work into it was doing dream work, actually, which I had never done before. Have you ever done anything?
Never.
Like that?
No.
It was
never.
it was kind of interesting. I did this work where I would, sleep, have a dream, and then wake up and try to write down whatever I remembered of it.
Yeah.
And then I worked with this coach to try to think about the dream as Janet Leigh and what it could mean for her. And it actually helped me get in somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But I never employed anything like that before, and it was
Wow.
yeah, it was
Well, who did you talk to?
this actor called Greta Seacat, coach called Greta Seacat.
Oh, yes, I've heard of her.
Yeah. Have you ever worked with a coach particularly?
Yeah, my second husband was an acting teacher, and he actually taught me how to work.
Yeah, do all of that kind of stuff. All right. Any other questions out there? I don't know if I asked all of them. Anybody? I can't see you, but just scream out. Oh, yes.
I wanted to know, what is something that you learned about yourself while working on Thelma that you will take forward in your life?
Something I learned working on Thelma that I learned about myself. I think I learned physically I could do more than I ever thought I could. I really do. That was a big one, too, because I just wasn't sure, and doing everyday shooting, and, I didn't know, but I was proud of myself.
Anybody else out there? Oh, when does Eleanor come out? I don't know. When does it come out?
Yeah,
you know?
next fall.
Yeah, it'll come out in the fall. I think it'll come out in the fall. Yeah, I'm very excited about it, and I have to say it was so it was incredibly inspiring to again watch June work, adjust, and all of that. I mean, your stamina dramatically is incredible, and it's really, really deep. And some of the deeper places that I remember, we did one scene where you really were, we cut, and then you said, "Whoa, I really went there," And it's so, and another time, and I have to say this was such a great, it was such an inspiring thing that you said to me. But you had said to me that you had friends that asked you, why are you still doing this?
Yeah.
Why are you still doing this, June? And
why?
you told me, because I'm still trying to figure it out.
That's true, too.
Do you ever figure it out?
I don't think I've ever figured it out, no. I'm still trying. I really am. Well, what about you, too? You must be still trying to figure it out.
Oh, yeah. I don't think you ever do figure it out.
No, I
hope
don't think
not,
you do
anyway.
either.
If you figure it out, you should do something else.
Yeah,
probably.
and then you quit. Then
Yeah.
you stop.
Yeah, because it's evolving all the time.
And I mean, each new thing that we get to do is like a whole learning process.
Have you ever felt like you were working on something and you just were so stuck? When you just couldn't figure it out?
Oh, yeah.
What do you do then?
Just keep looking at that script. I really do. I just keep reading over, and if it's a certain portion, I just read that thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, because you kind of find the answer in the book,
script,
in the
yeah.
text. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. I think that's us. Thank you all so much. Thank you, June.
Thank you,
We've left you
Scarlett.
guys here for too long. You're probably ready to see this film. Thank you, guys. Thank you, June.